Hello, and welcome back to Shadow Storyteller. If you enjoy chilling tales before bed, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. I read each one. Tonight, I'm going to take you deep into the heart of Oregon, into a forgotten forest where the trees are tall, the air is still, and the silence isn't always empty. This is a true story. Or at least, that's what was claimed by the man who survived it. Get comfortable. Turn off the lights. Tonight's tale is called The Pines of Black Hollow, Oregon. It was October 17, 2003, just a few days before Halloween. The kind of cold that bit through your jacket had already settled over the Oregon backcountry. Darren Whitlock, a 34-year-old freelance wildlife photographer from Eugene, had decided to take a solo trip to the Willamette National Forest, aiming to capture the golden hues of fall before the rains returned. He'd been there before, dozens of times in fact, but this time he was venturing into a lesser-known section of the forest, a place locals still called Black Hollow. He remembered an old man at the gas station in Oak Ridge warning him about that area. "You won't get the kind of quiet you're looking for out there," the man said, staring at Darren with cloudy eyes. "Not all silence is peaceful." Darren laughed it off. The trail into Black Hollow wasn't marked on any modern map, but he'd found it in an old forestry book at a used bookstore in Eugene. It described a trailhead hidden just off an old service road, with pine trees so dense they nearly blocked out the sky even at noon. He parked his Subaru Outback at the edge of the road just after 2 p.m. The sun was low, filtered through gray clouds, but there was still enough light to hike in. Darren carried his Canon DSLR, 2 lenses, a tripod, a small tent, and a handheld tape recorder he used for field notes. From the start, something felt off. The pines in Black Hollow were unnaturally tall, at least 80, maybe 100 feet. But it wasn't their size that disturbed him. It was how still they were. No breeze. No rustling. No birdsong. Even the familiar chirp of squirrels was absent. The only sound was the faint crunch of dry pine needles beneath his boots. He hiked 2 miles in before setting up camp beside an old moss-covered stump that looked like it had been struck by lightning decades ago. He checked his compass. North still pointed north. No signs of anything wrong. But still, he couldn't shake the tension in his chest. At 5:46 p.m., he made a short recording. Lights dying fast. No signs of deer. No birds. Just trees. And more trees. I should feel peaceful, but something's not right. As night fell, the silence became heavier. It felt pressurized. He cooked some instant noodles over his small camp stove, then zipped himself into his sleeping bag inside the tent. He left the recorder on, just in case he heard something strange overnight. At 2:13 a.m., the recorder picked up something. A whisper. Not wind. Not animals. It was a voice. Low. Raspy. Repeating the same phrase. "You don't belong here." Then silence. For nearly an hour. At 3:08 a.m., there was a scratching noise, long, slow, rhythmic, on the outside of the tent fabric. Darren didn't stir. The tape didn't pick up any breathing from him. He must have been frozen. The next entry on the tape was at 6:04 a.m. Darren's voice trembling. "I didn't sleep. I think someone was out there. I didn't look. I didn't want to look." He broke camp at first light. No breakfast. No photos. Just packed up and started hiking back the way he came. But the trail wasn't there. He swore it had only been a straight path. No forks. No junctions. Just one trail in. But now there were 3. And none of them looked familiar. He picked the middle one. Walked for nearly 2 hours. The sun kept rising, but the light in the woods didn't change. It stayed dim, like the sky was trapped behind fog that wasn't there. That's when he found the second tent. Old, moldy, torn at the seams. He stepped closer and saw a backpack, half buried in leaves. Inside, a driver's license. Name: Catherine L. Heller. Issued in 1987. From Salem, Oregon. But here's the thing. That license looked new. No cracking. No fading. It looked like it had been printed last week. Darren didn't wait around. He turned and ran. Branches clawed at his jacket. His feet slipped more than once on wet moss. He stopped only when he saw his car again, parked right where he'd left it. Except, the windows were fogged from the inside. End of part 1, but not the end of the story. Let me know in the comments if you want me to continue this tale, because the Pines of Black Hollow are far from finished with Darren Whitlock. And again, subscribe, like, and share if you want more bedtime horror stories here on Shadow Storyteller. Sweet dreams, if you can sleep. Darren didn't approach the car right away. Not because of the mist inside. It could have a logical explanation, he told himself. But something deeper held him in place. His heartbeat thundered in his ears, and his body felt locked, like his legs were buried in invisible mud. He stood about 20 meters away, watching the fogged windows, waiting for something, anything, to move inside. Nothing did. Step by step, he moved closer. The sound of his boots was muffled by the thick bed of pine needles beneath his feet. When he reached the driver's door, he paused. His fingers brushed the handle. It was cold. Too cold. He pulled it open slowly. It wasn't locked. A thin veil of mist rolled out, curling around his feet like smoke. The smell that escaped wasn't just damp or musty. It was older, deeper. Like soil soaked in time. Like something freshly unearthed. He held his breath, slipped into the seat, and tried to start the engine. Nothing. He tried again. Still nothing. No clicking. No engine noise. Not even a flicker of life from the dashboard. Battery dead. Maybe. But he had charged it before the trip. The car had never failed him before. He glanced at the rearview mirror. And for a split second, he swore he saw something behind the car. Something tall. Slender. Black as the pines. But when he turned around, there was nothing. Just trees. Still. Watching. He climbed out of the car and opened the hood. Everything looked fine. No torn wires. No loose connections. Out of options, Darren decided to walk. He remembered the dirt road would eventually lead east, toward a small residential area about 2 miles out. Maybe someone there could help. He started walking. Didn't look back. His watch read 8:21 a.m. He walked for what felt like an hour. His watch still said 8:21. He stopped. Looked up. But there was no sky, just the towering canopy of pines above him, blotting out the light. The world around him stayed dim, the way twilight does just before the sun disappears for good. He pulled his camera from his backpack. Maybe he could document the trail. At least that way he'd know if he was circling back. He powered it on. The screen lit up. But instead of a live view, the first image was a photo of him, sleeping inside his tent. He never took that picture. He never left the camera outside. He clicked to the next image. It showed him again, standing in front of the tent. But this time, behind him there was something else. A shape. Black. Tall. Featureless. He dropped the camera. His breath caught in his throat. No scream came. Just the thundering pulse in his ears. He turned to run, but the ground was soft, spongy, like it was absorbing his strength. His legs felt like lead. His vision blurred. And then, a sound. Not a voice. Not an animal. Something like a groan, stretched over time. Like an old beam of wood creaking slowly, just before it snaps. And a shadow moved. No footsteps. No rustling. Just presence. Tall. Much taller than any man. It stood behind a nearby tree, half shrouded, but visible in the gaps of bark. A shape of thick black mist. Densely coiled, but shifting slightly, as if alive. Darren froze. It didn't move. Didn't breathe. But he could feel it looking at him, through him. Then the voice came. Not aloud. Inside his mind. You were called. Darren screamed. Finally. Sound. He turned and ran blindly. Branches lashed at his jacket. Moss slipped beneath his boots. He didn't stop running until he tripped and tumbled into a narrow ravine, wedged between two boulders. Gasping, shaking, heart threatening to explode, he lay there, until he noticed something beneath the leaves. Clothes. A torn denim jacket. A white t-shirt. Old hiking boots, rotting at the seams. He leaned closer, brushing dirt away from the collar. There was a name stitched into the label. Whitlock. His name. But he didn't own that jacket. He never had. From the corner of his eye, he saw it again, the tall shape, closer now behind a nearby tree. And this time there was something different. A thin vertical line down the center of its head. A crack. It began to open. Not a face. Not a mouth. A void. Black as pitch. A darkness that swallowed the light around it. Darren shut his eyes. Lowered his head. Gripped the earth with trembling fingers. "I'm not here," he whispered. "I'm not here, I'm not here." But the ground beneath him began to breathe. Swelling. Falling. Like lungs under the soil. He leapt to his feet and ran again. No direction. No compass. Just away. And then another sound. A woman's voice. Whispering. Soft. Familiar. "Darren. Do you remember me?" He stopped cold. That voice. It was his mother. Dead since 1996. A car crash. Drunk driver. She was gone. But now she was here. "I'm waiting for you," the voice said. Inside the tree. Ahead of him stood a massive pine, split near its base. A hollow in the trunk. Just wide enough for someone to enter. "Come home. It's quiet here. No fear. No pain. No more noise." His hand reached for the rough bark. Heart hammering. Then he heard something else. A car horn. Twice. Short. He froze. A third time. One long honk. He knew that sound. His Subaru. He turned and ran toward the sound. The forest fought him with every step. Roots tried to trip him. Branches clawed at his clothes. The air itself seemed thick, like wading through a dream. But he kept going. And then, through the trees, he saw it. His car. The headlights were on. He didn't remember turning them on. The engine was dead. But the lights glowed steadily. He rushed to the door, yanked it open, and slammed it shut behind him. Locked the doors. Sat trembling. Silence. Then something shifted in the rearview mirror. He looked. Nothing. The forest remained motionless. But something had changed. The air felt lighter. The pressure had lifted. A breeze stirred through the pine needles. He glanced at his watch. 6:03 p.m. It didn't make sense. He had only been gone 4 hours. But when he looked into the mirror again, he saw her. A woman. Sitting in the back seat. Gray hair. Pale skin. Wrinkled hands folded in her lap. Eyes empty. His mother. Darren froze. His body locked in place, hands still gripping the steering wheel, eyes locked on the rearview mirror. She was still there. Motionless. Staring. The woman in the back seat looked exactly like his mother, just as he remembered her in her final years. Her face was lined with time, mouth neutral, as if she had been waiting for him all this time without anger or joy. Just patience. But something was wrong. Her eyes. They didn't reflect the dome light overhead. No gloss. No depth. Just dull, gray orbs, empty, like stones in a riverbed. Darren didn't speak. He couldn't. The air inside the car had turned heavy again. Breathing felt like swallowing thick smoke. Then she moved. Her hand slowly lifted, shaking slightly, and pointed toward the windshield. Darren turned his head, following the gesture. Ahead of the car, between two ancient pines, a figure stood. The same one he'd seen before. Tall. Black. A silhouette of absence. But this time it was closer. Details began to emerge. The outline of its elongated arms, the impossibly narrow neck, the splitting line down its head still faintly glowing with a cold blue shimmer. The forest behind it seemed to bend inward, pulled toward its presence like gravity responding to a black hole. Then it stepped forward. No sound. No leaves crunched. No branches snapped. It moved as if the world made space for it to pass. Darren reached for the key in the ignition and twisted it out of desperation. The engine coughed. Once. Twice. Then roared to life. Without thinking, he slammed the car into reverse. The tires spun, catching loose gravel and old pine needles. The car jolted backward, hitting a bump, bouncing once. He yanked the wheel and twisted back into the dirt road. In the rearview mirror, the back seat was empty. She was gone. Darren didn't stop. Didn't slow down. He drove blindly through the trees, branches scraping along the sides of the car, sometimes slapping the windshield, sometimes cracking against the roof. The headlights flickered, catching brief glimpses of movement between the trees. Shapes. Too many. Too fast to count. Some tall. Some crawling. Some hunched in the branches. But none followed. They just watched. When he finally broke through the tree line and back onto the main gravel service road, he didn't breathe until the tires skidded onto asphalt. Civilization. Kind of. He kept driving, unsure if he was going the right way, unsure if anything behind him was real. The forest had fallen silent again. The radio in the dashboard sparked to life for a split second. One note of static, then died. He made it to the Oak Ridge gas station just before 8 p.m. The same old man who had warned him the day before was still sitting outside on the bench, sipping something from a steaming paper cup. Darren got out of the car, slammed the door, and staggered forward. His knees almost gave out. The old man looked up at him, unblinking. "You saw it, didn't you?" Darren didn't answer. "Black Hollow doesn't take just anyone," the man continued, slowly rising to his feet. "It only calls those who have pieces missing." "What is it?" Darren rasped, voice raw. "What did I see?" The old man didn't speak for a long time. Then, "It's not something you saw. It's something that saw you. And now, it remembers." Darren looked back at the car. The interior light flickered. The driver's seat was empty. But on the passenger seat, something rested that he hadn't put there. A cassette tape. He picked it up. No label. He turned to the old man. "What the hell is this?" "Play it," the man said. "Not now. Not here. But when you're ready to know." Darren got back into the car and drove home in silence. The entire 2-hour drive, the tape sat in the passenger seat like a sleeping animal. Not moving. Not humming. But present. When he reached his apartment in Eugene, he locked every window, closed the curtains, left every light on. He showered. Tried to sleep. Couldn't. The image of the split-faced figure still lingered behind his eyelids. Around 3:12 a.m., he sat at his kitchen table, staring at the cassette. Finally, he inserted it into the old tape player he kept on a shelf near his desk. The player clicked. Word. Then played. It began with silence. Then his own voice. "This is Darren Whitlock. October 16, 2003. I'm recording notes before heading out into the Willamette Forest. Specifically, an area known in old local maps as Black Hollow." His brow furrowed. He didn't remember recording that. The tape continued. He described the trees, the silence, the sense of being watched. Then it changed. It was still his voice, but deeper, slower, as if something was dragging his words backward. "You don't belong, but you came anyway. The hollow knows you now. It knows what you hide." Then came the sound. A low breathing. Wet. Labored. Followed by a whisper. Feminine. "Come back." The tape ended with a sharp click. Darren didn't sleep that night. He left town 2 days later. Sold everything he could. Moved to Arizona. Dry land. No forests. He changed his name. Started over. But some nights around 3 a.m., he would wake in bed, drenched in sweat, unable to move. And from the hallway, he would hear pine needles crunching. Then a soft knock on the door. Not loud. Just enough. He never opened it. But once, just once, he looked through the peephole. And saw her. His mother. Standing there. No color in her eyes. Waiting. Behind her, through the narrow slit of darkness, The pines of Black Hollow stretched endlessly into a night that never ended. As the sun rose the next morning, painting the pine needles gold, Matthew was already back on the trail, his boots soaked and his flashlight dead. He hadn't slept. He couldn't. His mind was replaying that shadowy figure by the tree, the whispering voice that had said his name, and the sudden silence that fell afterward, as if the forest had swallowed all sound. He stumbled into the ranger's outpost at the edge of the park around 7:20 a.m., looking disheveled, pale, and exhausted. Park Ranger Clay Dobson, a sturdy man in his early 60s with graying sideburns and a Vietnam-era energy, raised his brow as Matthew leaned on the desk. "Jesus, you look like hell. Lost your group?" Clay asked, half joking. Matthew looked up slowly, his eyes bloodshot. "They're gone. I mean, I don't know where they are. They disappeared." Ranger Clay narrowed his gaze. "You're the guide, right? That hiking group from Salem? Thought you were out past Old Hollow Ridge." Matthew nodded. "We camped near the base of Pine Marker 9. Something happened. There were noises. Lights. I saw someone out there. One by one they went missing." Clay slowly stood up, his face suddenly serious. "You say Marker 9? "Yes." "Why?" Clay didn't answer. He reached into the drawer and pulled out a worn topographic map, unfolding it on the desk. He pointed to a red circle someone had drawn by hand around a cluster of trees about 2 miles northeast of Black Hollow Trailhead. "Listen, kid," Clay said, voice low. "We don't patrol that area anymore. Not since '92. Not since the McAllister incident." Matthew blinked. "I don't know what that is." Clay hesitated, then opened a binder from under the desk. Something older, not digitized. He flipped through laminated pages, news clippings, old Polaroids. 8 hikers, college kids from Eugene. Vanished near the same area. Same time of year, too, late summer. No signs of struggle, no blood, no gear left behind. Just a ring of pine needles arranged in a spiral at their campsite. Local tribes warned us about that area long before. Said the trees whisper when they want to claim something. Matthew's stomach twisted. "We saw something like that. A spiral in the moss. Thought it was part of the trail signs." Clay leaned forward. "You need to tell me exactly what happened." Matthew sat down, trembling as he recounted the sequence of events. The missing footsteps, the echoing voices, the figure at the tree-line, the shadow moving at unnatural speed. Clay said nothing the entire time, his weathered face unreadable. When Matthew finished, Clay slowly pulled a key from his belt. "There's a radio tower on Fern Point. Old ranger station. Still works. No cell signal in that area, but if anyone's out there still alive, it's our best shot." The hike up to Fern Point was tense. The forest felt different. Quieter. Heavier. The further they walked, the more Matthew noticed strange details. Tree trunks scarred in repeating patterns, animal bones arranged in careful circles, feathers nailed to bark with old rusted nails. Clay stopped several times, listening. "You hear that?" he whispered. Matthew shook his head. "I don't hear anything." "That's the problem," Clay muttered. "Even the wind avoids this place." By the time they reached the old tower, the sky had begun to dim again. It wasn't even 5 p.m., but clouds hung low and gray, giving the forest a leaden hue. The radio crackled as Clay tuned it. "This is Ranger Dobson at Fern Point. Requesting immediate search and rescue response for missing hikers. Possibly 5 individuals. Last known coordinates north of Marker 9. No reply. Clay tried again, this time changing frequencies. Still only static. Then, faintly, a voice came through. But not from the radio. From behind them. Ranger Dobson. Matthew froze. That voice. It wasn't human. It was stretched, like something mimicking speech. Something close but not quite right. "Who's there?" Clay shouted, drawing his sidearm. The tower creaked behind them. Matthew turned slowly. At the base of the tower, between the wood supports, a figure stood. Tall, lean, wrapped in shadows. Its face looked almost human. Almost. But its mouth was too wide. its eyes too still, like a photo brought to life. "Run," Clay whispered. "Get to the cabin." They sprinted, crashing through branches and underbrush. Behind them, they could hear it moving. Not running, but gliding, fast and silent like smoke caught on the wind. They made it to an old ranger hut nearby, slamming the door shut. Clay jammed a metal bar across it. Matthew leaned on the wall, gasping. "What the hell is that?" Clay was quiet. "I don't know. But it's not new. We've just forgotten. Or pretended to." As the night crept in again, the woods outside grew alive with sound. Not animals' voices. Whispering, laughing, crying. Then a knock. 3 slow, heavy knocks. "Matthew," said the voice outside. "It's me. Jesse. Let me in, man." Matthew's blood ran cold. Jesse had disappeared on the second night. He'd heard that same voice calling before. "That's not Jesse," he whispered. Clay nodded grimly. "It never is." The knocking continued, followed by scratching. Then silence. Hours passed. Matthew drifted in and out of uneasy sleep. When he woke, Clay was gone. The door still barred. No signs of struggle. Just his ranger hat resting on the floor. And on the wall, drawn in sap and ash, a spiral. Authorities found Matthew 2 days later, wandering barefoot near Route 47. His speech was broken. His eyes refused to close. He kept asking about the trees if they were watching. Of the others, no trace was ever found. No bodies. No gear. Not even footprints. The Black Hollow Pines remain closed today, listed as unstable terrain. But those who live near the edge of the forest swear they still hear things. Voices in the branches. A figure at the edge of the trees when the fog rolls in. And if you camp near Marker 9, if you're quiet enough, you might hear your own voice whispering from somewhere deep inside the woods.